what shocked me was that I could actually have faith in my own failure. That like what my entire world and my whole egoic consciousness was organized around avoiding. The last thing I want to do is fail. Once I'd failed, it's like, well, I failed. I don't have to try avoiding that anymore because I failed at that too. And then everything changed. I dare you to fail and see what doesn't catch you on the other side. It's a trustworthy path. The teachings of Christ. Christ is teaching me how to die and how to live again. What does it mean to die? What does it mean to fail? And what does life look like on the other side of that failure? Pain has been a really graceful guide. It's like crying out in desperation. That impulse to be still and counter-instinctually turn towards my pain. That wasn't in my vocabulary at the time. Nobody had ever taught me to do that, but Spirit taught me to do that. I had this recognition that my ancestors were alive in me. Their hopes, their yearnings were living through me. And like, here I am with the privilege of a human birth in a body to do the best I can to fulfill those unfulfilled dreams, not as a burden, not as a joy, as a responsibility because I love my family. My life has been a dumpster fire, but Christ lives in me. And this is what it's supposed to do. It's to refine our humanity.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Guiding Light. We are so excited to have our special guest, Thomas McConkie from Lower Lights, here with us today. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thomas McConkie is the founder of Lower Lights School of Wisdom and has spent over 25 years studying and teaching across contemplative traditions, including Buddhism, integral philosophy, and Christianity. He was authorized to teach by Shinzen Young in 2011 and is the only master teacher of integral polarity practice under John Kessler. A certified stages researcher with a master's from Harvard Divinity School, Thomas integrates adult development and classical awakening in his teaching. He lives in Somerville, Massachusetts with his wife, 2 children, and rescue dog. Thomas, you have a pretty amazing story of how meditation completely transformed your life. Before you found meditation, you were struggling with depression and many different things, if I remember correctly from your book, at One Minute. Can you tell us more about your journey to the path of this mindfulness that you've been teaching for so many years now?
Yeah. Thanks for starting out with that. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. What impresses me when you ask the question just now in that way, Jenna, is that what saved me, what converted me, what changed my life was something that is so wildly available and abundant. There's an irony to this that I mean, to say that I've struggled is maybe a great understatement. I had a hard first half of life and just couldn't really get my feet under me. Yeah, clinically, I was depressed, profoundly depressed. Spiritually, I felt like paralyzed, dead, lost to myself. And I would say by grace, I kind of cried out like I reached a moment of desperation and I knew I needed something different because nothing I'd done up to that point was working. And, this is a bit of the kind of the cliche, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I don't know about that. Certainly in my case, it was as if the moment I said a heartfelt prayer, like, I need help, the damnedest people just started showing up. People I would not think of them as meditation teachers, spiritual masters, but it's if I just started to see the world in a new way and tuned into this new frequency of spirit. And it changed everything. And I don't know why it feels really tender to me right now. I think it might just be like feeling your good company, you too. I feel how present you are with me, and I'm moved by it. But as I tuned into that new bandwidth and I listened from a new place in me, and I found stillness just a little bit at first, it opened me up into this world of healing, like in a physical and mental, emotional way, healing, but in a spiritual way, it was very much redemption.
Mm.
So that was almost 30 years ago. And I have been a deep convert to the silence since then. So start with that.
Thank you for pointing out what you're feeling. I'm feeling very tender to it. When you talked about this saving your life, I was really feeling this palpable presence of spirit and light and joy. And we might have listeners who are feeling that they're at their last, at that moment of crying out before
Right.
something pushes them over the edge. And were you 17? Remind me how old you were when you
17, 18, probably
eight.
closer to 18, but thereabouts.
This can happen at any time in life, right? Whether you're 18 or 58 or any age. What would you say to listeners who feel like they've tried everything and nothing's clicking?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, first, it's really hard. There's no advice. There's no adequate words, to guide one through that. I think that's what's so hard about this place we're talking about. Like, if I can appeal to St. John kind of image of the dark night, the dark night is dark because there is no help, because we feel abandoned and forgotten. So in all humility, knowing I can't say anything that would like really meet people in the depths of that loneliness that the dark night is, I would offer like maybe a little breadcrumb, which is that there's a way in which I'll put it in first person terms because that tends to be more palatable than me giving everybody advice. People who've never met me. What shocked me was that I could actually have faith in my own failure. That like what my entire world and my whole egoic consciousness was organized around avoiding. The last thing I want to do is fail. As I found myself failing, I learned in a very immediate way how trustworthy it was. Like, oh, all I had to do was fail. All I had to do is like stop spending so much energy freaking out about how my life's a failure and I've never done anything right and I'm never going to get this. Once I just really failed, I was amazed that like I was still there on the other side of failure. Like this person I thought was irrevocably broken and unredeemable. It's like, oh, I have failed now. It's not something I'm afraid of doing. I've already done it. And that was like where my whole being just softened. It's like my body, mind, spirit, every part of me was just like seized and contracted. And when we're in that state, we can't really feel anything. We can't really sense anything. And once I'd failed, it's like, well, I failed. I don't have to try avoiding that anymore because I failed at that too. And then everything changed. So to put that like more succinctly, I'd just say like, if you're in this moment that feels totally unbearable, like you've failed at life, and you can look to a million wrong decisions you made to get here. Like it's okay to actually move across that last threshold and just completely fail. Like really let yourself be a complete failure and see what catches you on the other side. I think that's what stunned me. Like something caught me on the other side of that. And that's where I found my own faith. And like faith is a big term. If people listening have faith in God, that's wonderful. But I'm talking about faith in the source of life and all that is. Something caught me. And so much so that it's given me supreme confidence in inviting other people. Like, I dare you to fail and see what doesn't catch you on the other side. It's a trustworthy path. So something like that.
I love that. And I love that feeling that the weight of failure, like, and accepting that and seeing on the other side, one, you're still here, and two, like, you still matter.
Yeah.
Like there's this idea that I see a lot in therapy of if I were to fail, then I have no value, I have no worth, I don't matter to the world. And it's like when you really fail big, fail many,
Yeah. Yeah.
when you
Exactly.
really get in there and have a
Yeah.
big fat failure, on
Yeah.
the other side of that is still a worthy and valuable and like intrinsically valuable person
Yeah.
and full of light still, still capable, still, wonderful and valued. And it's almost like, just like you're saying, like just so freeing to know that that failure doesn't take that away.
Yeah. No, thank you for that language, Sarah. That's powerful. Like it brings up new words for me that like when I look back on that experience, it's clear to me that the one who actually failed is not who I actually am. And what died in me was what I wasn't. Like what you named is like what is intrinsically worthy and valuable in me. Who I actually am didn't die. That's what came alive. And everything that I wasn't died with that. Well, not everything. I've still got more dying to do, but you get the point. It gave me an insight.
This concept of self is very layered and complex. I know the very, very beginner's level I have learning about a little bit of Buddhism. There's so much to learn. And
Totally.
I learned about this self that transcends the choices that I so often associate with myself, and I'm not articulating that very well, but there's this idea of this self that never dies, right? And so can you, for people who aren't familiar with this language and, this concept of who the self really is and what's dying and what stays alive, can you break that down for all of us?
I don't know if I can, but I love the possibility of trying and failing at that. I'm just smiling like before we kind of started this conversation, we had a quick huddle about like, where will we go? And I would have not guessed like 5 minutes in, we're talking about the nature of self, which just is funny to me and lovely. I want to say, so people listening will be from different like religious orientations, traditions, and some not religious at all. I was struck. So I started my kind of meditative path as a teenager, and I started with the Buddhists and learned pretty quickly that these are not the only people meditating. But I was really struck. I was at a gathering with Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan friar, and some people listening will know of him. He's been a big advocate for meditation, contemplation in the Christian tradition, and played a big role in its revival, you could say. We were talking about like the future and the health of the Christian tradition in the 21st century. And someone asked him, like, what are the other spiritual communities who are doing good work that would like support us Christians in doing our work? And he said, it was like the rapidity of his response that struck me. He didn't even think about it. He said, the Buddhists have done a great job at investigating the nature of self. I thought that was so striking for a guy who's literally read the Bible so many times that the spine is broken and he's had to rebind it like 10 times. I mean, this is a man who spent decades of his life in discipleship. He was so immediate to just credit the Buddhists as like having kind of done some real work on this path. So I say that maybe a little long-windedly, I apologize, but you named Buddhism when you said like the nature of the self. And I think that's a good impulse. The Buddhists have done a lot of work here, but what I'll say is somebody who's been practicing in the Buddhist tradition for 25 years plus now, what I've also come to appreciate is that the Christian tradition has so much to say about this, that yes, in this particular historical moment, this whole talk about egoic consciousness and investigation of the self, that doesn't sound Christian. But if we start to shift it into the register of like the natural man, the natural woman and person, the crucifixion and resurrection as like a false sense of identity and self, and the rising of an eternal identity in each of us. There's a way to have this conversation that's profoundly Christian and also informs the Buddhist conversation. I think we have a thing or two to teach the Buddhists about what the self is. So that's my framing. Now to get to your, do you regret asking me the question? Should we move on?
Not at all. No, on the edge of my seat here.
Okay, great. So with that little backstory, that's just my way of saying that this is a profoundly important question. As somebody who was lost to himself for so much of his life, and then through investigating the self, just had an authentic conversion experience of like, wow, the teachings of Christ. Christ is teaching me how to die and how to live again. That is the self in a nutshell. It is this very natural process of human development. Like we come into these bodies, we grow, we develop. As we grow and develop, we accumulate different identifications. We come to think, I am this, I am that. Let me offer a cute little story to ground it in something concrete. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. She's 2.5 and she's already like carrying around a little purse. She like loves to put on this little purse and she just collects things. Like she'll go to the neighbor's house and like take a toy and we'll tell the neighbor, so sorry, we'll return your toy, but like Sora's going to keep it for now. It's just full of all these little treasures and magical bits that she collects from her world. And I see her forming an ego. She's forming a sense of self. Like, I love that. I want that. I'm going to keep that and I'm going to carry it on my person. And to me, it's like, it's such a beautiful illustration of all of us. Because this conversation in spirituality as adults, and believe me, I've been in these conversations in Buddhist circles, in Christian circles, in Sufi circles. And like, it can get so dour, like, oh, we're so egoic. How do we die to the ego? And like, there's like this sense of guilt and shame and disappointment that we formed an ego. Like we were made to form egos. That's what human beings do. To me, it's one of the great gifts of a human body and birth and a human life. So all to say that we can have an ego, a fully formed ego, and like not feel guilty about it, but like take joy in it, that like we're a self. That's a good thing in my opinion. And then somewhere along the way in this developmental process, and you both have pointed to this already so beautifully, I'm just echoing in my own words, somewhere along this developmental process after we've built the self up, the same way my little 2-year-old is like putting little things in her bag. If we're lucky, if we let God get to us, we have the opposite impulse at some point in life where we look in the bag and we're like, you know, that's not me anymore. Like I remember when that felt like me, but that's not me. And that's not me. And we empty that bag out. And like the bag and all the things we put in it are no less precious for that. But we go through this process where we fill it up and then we start to empty it out. And as we empty it out, we get to a point where like things that we thought for sure were us. And like think of what is something that like you would say like for sure is who I am. This is a hard question and like maybe we need to pause with it for a moment. And I'm happy to volunteer. I'll tell you one, like, and this is very personal and I'm just going to go for it because I think this is the best way to share something real. I come from a family that is kind of, and especially like a father who's kind of known in the neighborhood and the community for his confidence. He's got this big, powerful voice, this presence, he's well-spoken. I learned from like the day I was born, like I need to be confident in the world. You know, that was just like, it's so much who I am. I couldn't imagine the world without it. And I've had the experience. It's been the last 2, 3, I don't know how many years where like that sense of confidence that felt like this is who I am. It's just like not there so much anymore. And all the time, like when I show up to wherever, like a conversation on a podcast, I have this feeling like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't even really know who I am if I'm honest about it. Like that confidence, that little toy in my bag, I don't even remember taking it out. I think like maybe it was an angel who like plucked it out of my bag and one day it's gone. And like, as I get used to it, it's like, oh, that confidence that gave me so much stability and orientation for 40 years of my life. Now that I really taste how gone it is, I can feel there's something even more real there. And I can even see how that confidence before, it was like there was bravado in it, and there was arrogance in it, and there was actually defensiveness. There was me pretending to be more confident than I was. All these things that it used to be my precious little thing. And now it's recognition like, oh, that was actually defending me against something more vulnerable. Like now that I feel just a little bit more naked before God, I'm getting a taste for like maybe what God would want to make me.
Mm.
So it's something like that.
That as you've been talking, I have felt moved to share something that you've reminded me of. It's the parable of the prodigal son that Jesus taught, and I've been reading it in Luke 15, and it's so interesting because in this story, this son, the youngest son, he wants his father's inheritance before his dad dies, which is such an offensive thing. Like, give me money, dad, now. And he goes and he spends all the money. It's the equivalent of adding things to his purse, right? It's what he wants. It's feeding the ego. It's me. It's now. It's what I want. And he loses everything. And he gets that moment of desperation where he is among the pigs, which is a filthy thing for Jewish culture because pigs are unclean. And he's so hungry, so desperate that he is starting to think about eating the feed that he's giving to the pigs.
Right.
In that moment, that suddenly, some translations of the text say he came to himself. He came to himself.
Right.
And he thought, my father has food in his household. Like, maybe my father will take me back.
Mhm.
And he thinks, he won't take me back as a son, but he'll take me back as a servant, maybe. So I'll go and I'll ask my dad to take me back as a servant. And so he goes back, and his father sees him in the distance and runs to him, does not shame him for the choices that he made, does not shame him for the ego, wraps his arms around him and kisses him, brings him into the house and treats him like a king, and gives him a robe and a ring and puts sandals on his feet. And I read that story as something that symbolizes the infinite, ultimate, eternal, unbroken, grace-filled nature of the love of the divine. Like the self in my view. Now, I don't think that a lot of Buddhist philosophy would agree with this. Correct me if I'm and I respect that. But for me, that self is that self that can never be unloved by God.
Yeah.
That God is running to embrace that self again and again and again. And I think that's the eternal story that for me gives me hope, is that there's something precious in me, no matter what I choose, no matter how much I wallow with the pigs.
Yeah. I'm so moved by that, Jenna. It occurs to me as you're sharing that. First, I know plenty of Buddhists who would agree with what you just said.
Oh, but I just didn't want to make it sound like I thought that was what the teaching is.
No, I get it.
So,
I get it.
beginner, I don't know my Buddhist philosophy, so.
I get it. It's it all harmonizes at a certain point, even the dissonances. But yeah, I'm really touched by what you just shared, because it occurs to me as you share it so beautifully from lived experience. I can tell the prodigal son is one of the great stories of the self we have. Like you two asked this question about the self and the ego, like that. This is one of the great stories of all human literature, I believe, about what does it mean to die? What does it mean to fail? And what does life look like on the other side of that failure? I think I would just add my voice here that I'm really moved by how you shared that story, Jenna. And I would just add that, like, in my own reading and imagination, the prodigal son, he came to himself and he was surprised to find out who he was. he was stunned, like how lovable he was and how much love he had to offer from that new place. Striking.
I'm like tearing up as you said that, just from my own, I've shared on the show, just kind of my own prodigal story. And it never ceases to amaze me how much I love my new self. And like the more I grow and evolve in this new self, it's just more and more lovable. And I can't say that about my old self, you know.
Yeah.
Like I had like a real, like, kind of figurative and like literal death. Like my heart stopped for a little bit, but of myself, and just became someone new. And before that, there were things about myself that I liked, but it was really just like this more authentic me coming through. And now when I'm like living in that authenticity of just like the love that I have, not only for like myself, but for the like, the divine and for other people,
Mm.
is like it just amazes me of being this new person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just love how you said that, because it wasn't like I was any less loved before, but like my ability to feel loved and to
Yeah.
like my confidence in who I am now
Yeah.
as my authentic self, and my authentic self that it's still evolving and growing, like
Mm.
the confidence that comes from that, it like amazes me.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Yeah. I feel so full. I'm curious where you two want to take it from here. I almost can't form the words.
Thomas, I'm going back again to that moment where you had your first prayer that was very, very sincere, where
Mm.
you were crying out for help. Can you tell us in concrete examples what kind of help came to you? Again, I'm thinking about our listeners, thinking, this sounds so nice, right? Coming home to who we really are, feeling this love. How? And you said earlier, it's accessible. What does that mean?
Yeah.
How does one
Yeah.
find that peace and silence that you talked about?
Yeah. So something, just an impression I have right now, because I'm imagining people listening in, and it would be natural to wonder, like, okay, amazing. Telling me to fail, you're telling me to die. It's going to be so good on the other side, but I don't want to fail and I don't want to die. And even if I did, I wouldn't know exactly how to do it. For me, and I'm a little surprised to like hear myself thinking this thought, but pain has been a really graceful guide. I think stillness was so impactful to me as as an adolescent, because I was in so much pain, and instinctively I wanted to avoid the pain. Counter instinctually, when I sat in stillness, I felt the pain more. It actually hurt more to sit still. And that was like the opposite of what I thought I wanted to do. And yet, as I stayed with the pain more, as I did my best to just relax with it and let it inform me, let it reform me, I realized like what a wisdom teacher the pain was. Like I hurt in all the places that I was resisting. I hurt in all the places I was proud. If I practiced the fidelity to my pain, I learned to trust it very deeply, like it was showing me a way step by step that I hadn't thought to take. So I think first and foremost, like crying out in desperation, that impulse to be still and counter instinctually turn towards my pain. That wasn't in my vocabulary at the time. Nobody had ever taught me to do that, but spirit taught me to do that. And the path has only proved more and more reliable over time. So that would be a start. There are other things I could say about that question, but just like really sacramentalizing our pain is a profound experience. And I say that again, I want to say that with some caution, that there are kinds of pain, like for example, trauma. We know a lot about traumatic stress, and trauma in the physical body that we didn't know before. Sitting with trauma is not so straightforward. And I come from my own traumas, as I think we all come from traumas, and some much more than others. I have a relatively very privileged background compared to others, but just acknowledging that like trauma is pervasive in the human population, and that like I'm not a guy relatively privileged saying you should just sit with your pain. That can actually be a dangerous thing. So just an important qualifier that when our pain is so overwhelming to us that we don't feel safe in our own body, that's a really important time to recruit help and companionship, psychiatric, clinical, professional, but also spiritual, and just good old friendship and good company. That's especially important with like that particular category of trauma. But that said, I will say that as you reclaim your body and your own embodiment, as you work with the body as sacred vessel, you will tend to gain more confidence in your capacity to stay fully present to everything life is showing you. And that was a kind of, like I said, the counter-instinctual move that came when I was 18 that just kind of shocked me. Nothing had prepared me for that, and it changed the course in my development.
Sierra, did you have a thought? I had a thought that you had a thought.
I kind of had a thought that she had a thought too. I think she has a lot to say about this.
Oh my goodness. No, but I'm just like, just soaking it all in. I love doing this. So I'm just super excited you're here. But I was actually thinking of what a treasure it is for your flexibility of thought and your ability to have an interfaith perspective on a lot of these topics and principles, and how that has informed your faith, and how you're able to utilize principles and practices from other faith groups and just people in general, and how that you're able to integrate that so well. And I'm sitting here reflecting on what a treasure that is, and just how beneficial that has seemed to been for you, of being able to have an open mind to so many different philosophies and ways of thinking, and integrating that into your sense of self and the way you see the world and people. So that's, I don't know if there's a question in there, but I'm marveling at that right now.
Well, I mean, I certainly feel honored by that. And my experience sitting on the side is like just feeling how capable you two are, like feeling the depth and the richness of your own spiritual lives and your generosity as listeners and hosts to just take us, like, where spirit guides, if you will. So I feel that same appreciation coming back. But thanks for having me here, Sierra. And we're not done yet. I think there's more.
I had a thought that I definitely want to ask you, Thomas, more about your spiritual journey and
Sure.
inspiration. I also would like to respond to this idea of sitting with pain.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Um, Working with a woman right now in my chaplaincy practice who is really in crisis, and she's been in crisis for a few months, and so she's receiving care from a lot of professionals, and I'm also part of the team of care. And I can say this because it's, I'm not identifying who she is, but she she cuts her body because she says it's better to feel the physical pain than the emotional pain. And she feels like cutting is the only time she can distract from the psychological burden that she's going through. So I do want to emphasize how real this is, that, like you said, psychiatric help, and there might be many steps in a person's journey to get to a place where you can truly sit with the pain that you're having psychologically. And so if any of our listeners are experiencing that, I want to normalize that. And a lot of my work with this precious, incredible individual that I'm witnessing going through this journey is reminding her how loved she is, and reminding her that there will be a time when she'll be able to feel that. I truly believe she's going to get there, and also just honoring where she is now and honoring how excruciating it is for her. When we can get to a place where we can start to breathe into pain, I have noticed that our relationship with the experience of pain can almost befriend it. So again, this is not when we're in crisis, as this example that but
exactly.
if we continue down the path. So for example, for me, I have a couple herniated discs in my neck, and for many years, this was one of the greatest burdens of my life because I just could hardly stand the pain. My muscles will spasm. I can't, look right and left when I'm in those acute symptoms. And over the years, I've learned that when I start having a flare up, if I can start breathing deeper and saying, okay, this sensation of pain is coming and I am not this pain. This is a sensation. This is a signal from my body. I can bear this. It's amazing how the relationship to the pain changes my experience. So it's no longer this, it's still scary, but it's not all-consuming, terrifying. I know that there's life beyond the sensation. And I think that's one of the incredible spiritual practices of sitting with pain, is befriending it in a way, whether it's the physical pain, the psychological pain. I am not the pain. Myself is outside of this pain. So I hope that's helpful for anybody who's wondering, what do we mean by sitting with pain?
Yeah. And Jenna, I just want to add really quick, because not only sitting with pain, but Jenna knows this, our listeners don't, but I guess I'll share it. I recently am in the process of getting diagnosed with a disease called myasthenia gravis, which is where your muscles and your nerves don't talk to each other. And so I am having a lot, and I probably have had it for a while, and just negating, shaming my pain has been to my detriment. So I love what you both are saying about not only acknowledging it, but letting it inform you, because it was trying to tell me hey, something's wrong with your body. And I was just like, no, don't tell me that. And when I listen to it and I take the rest, and it's so healing. So not only you're saying to just sit with the pain, but if you tend to go the other way, and I do, of no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to push you off. I'm kind of more of attacking that pain and being more offensive about it. It's even more important that we change our relationship to the pain. So I just wanted to say that, because that can be, from someone who is living that right now, detrimental to our minds and our bodies. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
The body keeps the score. The body can't lie, right? The body is telling us information. Yeah. I'd like to shift the conversation a little and ask about this spiritual journey that you've been on, Thomas. You grew up in a very rigid, and correct me if you would describe this a different way, but a religious kind of rigidity. And I did too. So we all three of us grew up as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We were raised in that tradition, and all three of us are still active in that faith tradition. And all three of us have had, our own journeys and questioning. And Thomas, you had to find, and forgive me if I'm characterizing this wrongly, but I think you had to find other sources of spiritual nourishment. And then you kind of came back to this faith practice. Is that correct? That, you came back to the practice of the church, and now it seems like you're integrating many different spiritual practices. So can you tell us more about that? And please correct me if I misdescribed your journey.
No, you totally got it in broad strokes. I did not know that you were both active Latter-day Saints, so that's really fun to learn that in the middle of conversations. I'm thrilled about that. Yeah. Is there anything specific I could focus on that would be interesting or useful about anything? I mean, there are a lot of things you just said, you know.
Yes, I mean, I think we're living in a time where a lot of people are questioning the value of
Yeah.
art because it does feel so rigid, and now we just have so much information, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
About history and humanity and just psychology and, what is the value of a church community, and
Yeah.
how does one and why would one stay in a community like this after having so many enlightening experiences in other places?
Yeah. Yes. So I'm gonna speak in no particular order, just as it comes up. Here we go. And interrupt me anytime and jump in, but I'll get us started. So I almost never describe myself in any context as agnostic. But if we're talking about this dichotomy of go to church, don't go to church, in the Latter-day Saint tradition, it's like active Latter-day Saint and inactive Latter-day Saint. And inactive is, pejorative. You don't want to be in that category if you're in a Latter-day Saint community. I am agnostic about that category. I have worked with so many people. I've lived my own life. I was not I was not only not lost in a particular way when I was away from like church activity and participating in a ward family for 20 years. Those were some of the most growthful years of my life. And I really felt guided. And I felt like it would have been a violation of my integrity to do anything but what I was doing. So, to the extent that that's relevant to anybody listening, I would say I love the conversation about what's the value of church in an age where many people are kind of putting it behind them and finding new ways to cultivate their spirituality. But I'm not coming from a place like I know which one's better. It's true. Like I've been a churchgoer to my surprise in the last 12, 13 years after like a 15-year, like very lovely career in Buddhism, let's say. I was I was even more shocked than my own parents when I'm like, hey guys, I think I really want to go back to church. So I want to just like give the listeners context. So that said, what could I say about the journey? Maybe I've already said it. Maybe that like if I've learned anything, it's that this dichotomy of in and out of any one tradition is too blunt an instrument to help us like really to work for us in our spiritual lives. That's one. But I would also in my own way kind of redefine what activity in a tradition means, depending on where we live in the world and depending on the culture and depending on the norms of a given group of worship that varies everywhere. We may feel more or less fit in that space. If we feel enough fit, if we get enough benefit from it, we'll keep going. If it's just too much, if it's painful to be there because we're misfits, then we'll probably tend to stop going, right? There's a whole range of that. But for me, what changed in my heart is not that, oh, I didn't go to church for 20 years, then I did go back. That's a fine conversation to have. But what was really powerful for me was like feeling my heart crack wide open to the livingness of my tradition. Almost all at once, I had this recognition that my ancestors were alive in me. Their hopes, their yearnings were living through me. And like, here I am with the privilege of a human birth in a body to do the best I can to fulfill those unfulfilled dreams, not as a burden, not as a chore, as a responsibility because I love my family. That was a total revelation. And that didn't mean going to church or not going to church. And like letting go of like maybe the misinterpretations of Jesus and the codification and dogmatizing of Jesus, but like to just feel the risen Christ in my life and in my heart. That's what changed me. So with that change of heart, it made sense to like go to a place in the neighborhood where people got together once a week and to like, I had a new faith and a new source of reserve to grapple with all of our very flawed humanity. That actually felt like an appropriate place for me to go and engage and acknowledge like, you know, my life has been a dumpster fire, but Christ lives in me. And this is what it's supposed to do. It's to refine our humanity. So church has worked for me in my little neighborhood, in my little context. My wife, a woman of color, same neighborhood, same cultural rules, work way better for the white guy than the woman of color. So how do we, like, it's complicated. It's complicated. I don't mean to get political here or identitarian. It's more to just acknowledge that I hope people who are in this conversation and care about it, I hope you come alive and that you trust, like, being alive, that like you will live the life you're given to live. So I don't know if I answered any of your questions, but there you go.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you said something about feeling misfit. I think that is really important because I think those that have had a true, like, again, a change of self, a sense of self, a change of that, and that take that on the way that you just beautifully explained. I'm not going to touch that. You just explained it well. Are so well equipped to make sure or to be a part of the environment of church that allows for other people to not feel misfit. And that is, I think the opposite of that is, you know, where people feel so misfit in church is so counterproductive to the mission of, you know, of Christianity. In general, it's not biblical to make people feel misfit, 99 in the one. Like, if that one, you know, sheep is a little bit different, like, that's the one we want there. That's the one we want there. That's what's taught. And to have been that one, and then to come back and know that there's so many people who are all feeling like the one, but are conforming or whatever, trying not to be, you know, it's projecting a different self. It is so important to make sure that no one feels that way. And I love that you said that because it's just so prevalent in so many different faiths. I think I can only speak to mine and Christian faith of being okay with the misfits because that's where they belong. If Jesus did anything, he gathered the misfits. You know, they were a ragtag bunch back in the day, you know, and to have that perspective, I just think is so powerful because you know what that's like. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that. I love what you said.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up? Anything on your heart?
Hmm. Well, I think there's a lot, and same question to you too, because you've held this conversation so beautifully, and really from the outset, I've felt like such a powerful spirit in it. So, yeah, anything you're feeling as well. I'm feeling just incredible, like a brightness of hope in my heart. You use this language early in the conversation, Sarah, but just I think a dignity and a worth. I'm just like in my heart, and now I'm just really aware of the awesome dignity of human beings and creation, and have a lot of faith, whatever moment people are in. I've been in my own tough moments, and life is gentle to me these days, and I'm grateful for it. But whether you're like, in placid, smooth seas or storm tossed, there's still incredible confidence of like what spirit is already doing with us all. I just feel this is ironic. I feel huge confidence, not in myself. I just feel tremendous confidence in God and the reality that we live in.
I feel that too. Something has been happening in this conversation. because all three of us have been crying. We're just, and I think it's this overwhelming feeling of that love and being held. And I think that this is the beauty of communal spiritual practice coming together. And I'd like to encourage our listeners, wherever you are in your journey, maybe we can each trust right where we are, whatever place we find ourselves in. Our tagline for this podcast is follow the peace. And by that, Sierra and I mean, we know that you can follow the sources of peace in your life and rest in them. So may you rest. May you know that you are loved. May you be around people who see you for who you are, and that's that self, the real you beneath all of the layers and all of the struggles and the narratives of the world. There is a you that is perfectly whole and loved. Sierra, do you have anything to add? Okay.
Oh, that was perfect, Jenna.
Thank you both. Thank you both so much. And thank you to our listeners. We hope that you will follow the peace.